the team that we've been working with from Edinburgh Napier University, headed by Professor Martin Tangney, initially were looking at using the waste products from the production of Scotch whisky to produce biobutanol, which is an almost perfect petrol replacement and diesel additive. They have successfully evolved the technology for that and are currently in the process of building a production plant at Grangemouth, which will be up and running in, I believe, the next couple of years. We've been talking to Martin and his team since 2016 and also touched base with the creamery in 2016 as cheese whey is potentially an ideal substrate for the production of biobutanol in that it is a waste product, so it would come into the production stream with effectively no cost. What I've been hoping, and Martin is very keen to explore, is the potential for producing butanol at very low, relatively low levels. I mean, possibly a few million litres, rather than the many millions of litres that the sort of systems that are up and running around the world currently produce, which would ideally suit the setup at the Isle of Man creamery. Creameries, particularly the Isle of Man creamery, is already halfway there in that they have storage vessels which they use as storage for the waste whey and water when the pipeline has to be serviced. These could be relatively easily converted into fermentation vessels. They have land available on the site, which again, where a portable distillation unit could be put in at a relatively low cost. We then come to what they do with the products. I mean, the system that
well, just for a bit of context, I suppose, John. 2004, the creamery disposed 23 million litres of this whey and wash water into Douglas Bay. 2018, it's now 13.6. So that's an incredible amount of whey and wash water. I believe 80% of it is purely wash water, and the rest is whey. So that's you reckon that's usable and then...
Well, it's about. I mean, the point is, what you'd have to do is you'd have to have a system, and certainly the systems that I've been looking at could be scaled down to relatively small scale production, and if it could be bought in as a zero cost item, in that basically currently you have the cost of disposal of the whey, etc. If you could remove that whey from the waste material and just end up with wash water, I presume that would be a much lesser problem for discharge into Douglas Bay.
And what do you make of the current method of disposal?
I personally, I think it's not a good idea. I mean, it links very much into the disposal or the arrival of plastics into the sea over decades, where initially the assumption was that it wouldn't be a problem; it would just be degraded within the environment. And I mean, but when you look at the amount of cheese whey that's produced worldwide, I mean, it's billions of tons of this stuff, and not all of it is dumped into the sea, where obviously dilution is a factor. A lot of it's dumped into into rivers, which means that any fish or other organisms within that environment would die because of the oxygen depletion that happens as a result of cheese whey.
But in regards to the situation in Douglas Bay, that's not the case.
No, because it's when you think about it, I mean, because it's going into a very large, very dynamic water system, effectively dilution means that it's going to have a relatively small effect on the environment local to the discharge point, although there obviously will be an effect. I mean, there's food value within it, so one would presume that organisms are going to develop around there which will take advantage of the micro food particles that are within cheese whey. So yes, in that sense, I can understand that the report would say, well, it's not a problem for human. It's not like putting radioactivity into the sea, which obviously will kill everything. But at the same time, it's this whole concept of we are wasting a potentially useful material. If we could produce, a few 100,000 or 1 million litres of butanol a year, would mean that the Isle of Man had its own strategic fuel reserve. And I mean, with the way that with global warming, I mean, the weather patterns across the world are changing. I mean, we've seen recently just how vulnerable the Isle of Man is to with shipping. I mean, the number of times that the boats can't sail because, I mean, if we had a period of, say, 3 or 4 weeks when there were just such bad storms that the boats couldn't sail, what would we, how quickly would we run out of fuel?
So it's a sustainability sort of project that you're sort of looking to pursue here, I suppose. And in regards to biobutanol, it's fairly clean.
Oh yes, it's effectively an organic material. It's a very simple organic material. I mean, basically, the residues that are coming out of any vehicles that it's burnt in are basically it's just really water. Although, I mean, there's an odour issue with it. I mean, apparently the butanol produces a smell like bananas. I mean, if you don't like bananas, obviously it might be a problem for you, but I think a relatively minor one.
Where can you take this to then? Because I suppose you met with the creameries in 2016. What did that sort of amass to?
Well, they were very interested in the concept, and at the time, Martin Tangley and his team were heavily involved in developing the whiskey project. Although as the work they've done on that is now completed, they can now focus and are already starting to look at cheese whey. What we have to do is basically arrange to get samples from the creamery of the cheese whey, because it's actually the material that's coming out that they're disposing of has more in it chemically than most cheese whey, because of this issue that there's certain elements of it they can't economically remove, and so they just have to dump them. It would be very interesting to see, once Martin Tangley and his team have done an analysis of it and basically resolved the potential production of butanol, it's acetone, butanol and ethanol. So we're not just getting butanol, we're getting an element of ethanol as well, which is the normal fuel that people associate with other alternative fuel supplies to petrol. But acetone as well is a very, very valuable and much sought after component. So potentially with that, it could be stored on island until we have sufficient to warrant a tanker coming over and getting it, and then that would be a further sort of income stream. So there's a lot of potential there. But the most important thing, I think, is if we can develop small scale technology that is viable for creameries to use cheese whey in this way, then the concept can be sold across the world, and the Isle of Man, if it was involved in the development of it, would effectively become a permanent beneficiary of any income from that.
Well, is that something you need to pitch to the likes of DEFA or infrastructure?
Well, yes. As I say, we had a meeting arranged with Geoffrey Boot on the 5th of November, but unfortunately, Geoffrey had to go off island unexpectedly, and so the meeting didn't take place. But what we're looking at now is to re-establish a meeting with Martin and potentially others of his team in the new year. And then the matter hopefully will be taken forward, and we can see just what start to assess just exactly what the potential for it is.